One of the questions that was asked of me on YouTube was, how did I actually complete a PhD when I have ADD? And this is actually a really good question. There's a lot of different components to it, and it's something that it took me a long time to sort of figure this out, right? So, um, when I started my PhD, so remember I'm a associate professor of innovation strategy and entrepreneurship now. When I started my PhD and when I was well into being an assistant professor, I did not realize I had ADD. I knew that I had something for a lot of different reasons. One of them was I was in special ed. I was in a small country school um, way out in northern Ontario, and they didn't even know what those things were at the time, right? Like people knew that I had something, and I was, I guess, they would say developmentally delayed, I guess, at that point. And, I had struggled sort of paying attention to things. I still remember I have vivid memories of bouncing. They had these great big huge sort of yoga balls that were there, but they didn't call them yoga balls at the time. And I was able to bounce on them. And that was like a really big thing for me. Um, so I remember like just struggling all the way through. Like school has been a massive struggle for me. Like it does not come easy to me in any sort of way. And if I sort of ease off the brakes, I struggle all the time, right? And it's always been this really hard push. And so you know, going through and doing that has been part of the reason why I don't like I'm going to tell you this. I don't like the career, but I like the sort of challenge of it. I don't like the everything else that's a result of the challenge. And I know that seems really weird and contradictory, but that's really what it is. And you know, going through and dealing with the fact that, I struggle with things. I mean, when I went into, high school, I bombed the first couple years of high school. Like, bombed, like, not doing good, like, failing, basically. Um, and then university was the same way when I went into there, bombed. But the sort of key was me turning in all of those circumstances was turning and saying a big screw you to the world and focusing on my own work and focusing on uh, me getting this thing done. I know that sounds like it's awful to say that, but that's really it. And so, the challenge is that it's like super isolating. That's the hard thing with it, right? Um, I never took medication. I tried it very briefly, when I found out, when I was sort of diagnosed, when I was older. And I had a really bad reaction to it. So I decided not to do it. And, like it was, like bad reactions. That was like hallucinating. And that was like not a great experience. So the thing that I've learned, and maybe I'll if there's I don't know, I've got like really mixed feelings with it because it's me, right? Like um I'm not so there's all different forms. I can't remember what there's I don't know if it's 6 or 7 different kinds of forms of it. But me, I cannot remember anything. I can't remember people's names. Essentially my working memory is not it's not great, so I have to hammer things down repeatedly a lot, and it's got to be super crazy quiet if I'm going to get anything done. But I like a little bit of distraction in the sense of like if I study at a library, for example, I'm pretty productive. Um, and I can go into like tunnel vision pretty easily, right? Like that is a sort of key thing, and especially with programming and things, I get this like super tunnel vision that I don't think I can't explain it to other people. It's like flow, but it's a really in-depth sort of feeling with it. Um, and how did I actually get through to the other side of doing this? And I guess, recently now looking at like I've had I've done okay. And the biggest thing is just telling the world screw you, and just doing your thing and not worrying about the rest of the world. That's like one of the benefits, if you didn't sort of know this with this particular, form that I have, is that I do worry about the world, um, but it's less of a worry than I think than most people. So if my wife was doing a PhD and went into it, she's I would everybody's got something, right? That's the thing you got to remember, is that's why I don't like labels. I don't like, and I kind of agree with my mom that way. I don't necessarily like labels, but you kind of have to know where your brain functions, and everybody's brains functions differently. It's not a disability. I hate that term. It's just you're just different, right? And that's your thing. So my wife was doing a PhD, and she did do a very well-known professional degree, um, and she's doing very good right now. But if she did do a PhD that was very open-ended and very uncertain, that that's what research is: super open-ended, super. You don't know if you're done today or tomorrow. Um, but she did it. She would be a complete workaholic. Um, like would I'd be divorced. Um, and B, she would be a complete nervous wreck. Like there would be nothing left of her, and whether she actually completed it, compared to myself, I don't know. I don't know if she'd be able to complete it because of that, right? And I think people sort of select into things that they know that they can do, or there's elements that they can actually do. So I think like that's the thing you have to realize, even though that you have something, right? Like everybody's got something. That's what you have to realize. Everybody has something. If it's not this, it's something else. If you don't have that particular thing, it's something else, right? But the gifts that you have allow you to select into things that sort of resonate with you. That's why I like search and discovery. I like the sort of str I like figuring puzzles out. I don't like the struggle. And if I can get just paid for figuring out puzzles without the, performance aspect of it, I would do it. And I mean, part of me thinks that, um, academic life is not for me, right? Like I'm very well versed in that. Many thoughts is very open. Um, a lot of thoughts about quitting and leaving, going into industry because it's less focused on that if you get to the right position. I've been in research and development before, and it's a lot of problem solving. Um, but the performative aspects is less severe than it is in academia. You're not measured for everything that you do. And so you can actually go out for lunch. They'll take you out for dinner. They'll, do fun things like that, which is not acceptable in academia, right? Like you have to work all the time. And that's the thing, how I cope and I got through. Some people, I think that they're really sharp, and that's what I basically, like they're neurotypical, and I think I have a pretty high IQ. If you were to look at that, of just like, intelligence level, but I have other things, right? Like it's super hard for me to pay attention in classrooms. You'll see if you're watching me at a conference or something, like I got to get up and move around. I got to go to the bathroom. I try to pay attention. I can only pay attention for short snippets. Um, and I have to go. I have to, that's it. And so, there's two aspects for me to get through. Well, the one aspect is, doing rewards in my mind of like, if I sit here a little longer, I can get up and go do something. And another aspect of it is taking just a lot of breaks and getting a lot of exercise all the time. And that seems to work a lot, right? For me, is I could balance some of those things. Another thing that I experimented with in the last couple of years that has been extremely helpful, but I get headaches from it. And so I'm trying to balance this at this moment. I get migraine headaches. They're super personal. Um, I balance the um, uh, intermittent fasting, and I've really figured out, like, if I do intermittent fasting and I go and I push myself a long intermittent fast, I'll get into that sort of weird state. It's like it's a very focused state. Particularly if you push it long, and there's good reason for that for intermittent fasting. I sort of read a couple of books on it, and that's when you're hunting. You're not, you're starving basically, and we're good at dealing with starving, and we're going to be really focused on finding our prey at that moment. So there's like good reason, I guess, or a good theoretical reason why you might experience this feeling. Um, but that there's different factors. So exercise, taking breaks. I mean that's why I'm exhausted come weekends, and I just got so much stuff to do, and I pushed the world away so much that I've just got stuff piled up in the weekends I got to catch up on, and I'm also pretty physically exhausted to keep pushing, putting up with that. Now, I used to, in undergrad, I'd work all the time, like literally all the time, and that was my way of coping with it. So my first year bombed, but I think that's pretty typical. And then after that, I was getting good grades, and the way that I did that is I just studied all the time, like physically all the time. And when you're listening to that, you don't understand how much I actually studied. I'd be, going to the library by 8 o'clock, which is when it opened, and I would close it at 10 o'clock. I had the librarian say it was okay to go home. Um, I had people definitely say that, I was working too much. I had my professor saying I was working too much. And, there's probably some truth to that. I probably was. So, um, I've learned to balance this a little bit more with living my life and being okay with telling F you to the world, screw you to the world. Um, I gotta cope with that. And I think, like, as you are in this career, you begin to deal with that, right? Like, I have life outside of work, and dealing with that is my way of coping with the, attention deficit disorders that I have. I don't like it. I don't even like that, the whole thing, how it's all turned into this big thing. I get in the classroom, um, some kids are very disruptive and it's hard to learn. I get that. I 100%. I completely get it, but I don't like the sort of labeling of it and the negativity surrounded around it. It's so my point is live your freaking life, tell the world F you, and just, keep studying, keep working, and find that right combination for you. Get lots of exercise. I do drink coffee, and that was a godsend. I think that's my stimulant, right? So instead of taking medication, I do drink coffee, um, and that's my stimulant. And I sort of balance that throughout the day, and that calms my. I know lots of people get jittery with coffee. It calms me. It's a very much a calming feeling, and I can focus a lot more. I think that's probably the way that you actually understand that you have something. I didn't know that. Um, so, just going through and being okay with who you are, and just really focusing on just doing your thing and studying and working. And when you need to take a break, you tell the world, frig off and take your break. Um, and you do all of that kind of stuff, right? You don't let the rest of the world dictate you. So attention is a social construct, right? We that's I want to I'll talk about that in a little bit, but I won't talk about that on this particular podcast. It's already going too long. But it's a social construct, right? And you got to be able to tell the world "f you" when you just don't feel like it. So that's it. All right, take care, and that's it. Hopefully you learned a little bit about this. All right, take care. Have a wonderful day.